Welcome CSE 121 W1 to exercise 23, and it's our introduction to Python dictionary. Now, I haven't worked with dictionaries a whole lot. I worked with databases and MySQL databases, and I want to work with databases in Python, but I didn't want to skip over dictionaries, so I'm going to do my best to introduce dictionaries to you as kind of a lead-in to databases. So we'll kind of get started here, and I don't know how far we'll get, but I want it to be at least an introduction so you understand how key value pairs work. Now, best place to go to learn a little bit about Python dictionaries, I think, is W3 Schools. So if you go to Python and go to Python dictionaries, you'll come somewhere that looks like this. And I'll just go over some basics with you. This is the basic format of creating a dictionary. And there's different ways to construct a dictionary, but this is probably the easiest. And just to go through this, this is the dictionary name, like a variable. And it's equal to a key value pair set. And here's the key and here's the value. The key is brand, the value is Ford. And notice they're both strings except when you have a number like a date. So they're just strings and they're separated by colons. And then when the next one comes up, there's a comma. So it's kind of like CSS, if you ever worked with CSS, where you have these opening and closing curly braces, where you have property value. That's kind of the way CSS works, except they terminate everything with a semicolon at the end. Here, you basically put a comma before each one. Now, you could have these kind of spread out too, but they look nicer when it's like this. So we're going to set it up like this. So again, this is dictionary name. This is the key value. Key value. Now, we don't have multiple listings. This isn't like a database. This is kind of almost like one entry. So that's why they call it a dictionary. It's like one entry. So it's not like a database where we have a whole list of cars. We're not doing that yet. Right now we just have one particular car with a brand, a model, year. So we're going to kind of work like that. So that's how dictionaries are going. So it's storing data values and key value pairs. And again, colon and then comma, and then you don't have a comma at the end. Don't put a comma at the end. Don't put a semicolon. It's going to look like that. And other things just to be aware of, you could just print out the dictionary. I'll do some of these, try it yourselves. You could do these too. This is what it looks like when you print it out. So it prints out everything. So it's just printing out the key values, everything we have in a dictionary. So it's just printing it out. So it's not really doing anything special here. It's just accessing it and printing out the dictionary as it is. If you want to print out a certain value of a key, you could basically just print out the dictionary and the key for that. So here we're printing out this dict, and then in square brackets, just like we would use an index number for a list, they're putting brand, and it should print out Ford. And there it is. It's printing out Ford. So if you put model, it should put Mustang. And if you put color, you'll get a key error because there is no key for color. All right. And it says ordered or unordered. They're ordered except for earlier dictionaries, so now they're ordered. Duplicates are not allowed. And I think we talked about that before with sets, when we worked with sets. And there's different methods. You can get the length of the dictionary and all kinds of different things. The data types of all the different elements that are in there. So string, int, Boolean, list data types. You can even have lists inside there. Here's a color list. And actually that's good because we might do something like that, put a list in there, because I was doing colors of baseball teams. So I don't know if there's anything else we have to worry about there. You can also construct it like this. Here's another way to create one where you could just give it the name. Instead of using those curly braces, you could set it up like this. So this is just another way to do this constructor, this dict, and use the dict constructor, and then basically put your value pairs like that. And you don't have to put quotes on everything when you do it. And it'll still look the same way. They'll still print out with quotes the same way. It's just constructing it in a different way. Access items. This is good. A couple ways you can access items. One is you can just have a variable that basically accesses the dictionary and then whatever key it is. So when you do that, it should just print out. Here it's saying X equals this dict model. It's printing out Mustang. So that's one way to do it. And we already mentioned that earlier. Another way is the get method. It works pretty much the same way, except it just doesn't use these square brackets. It just uses a get method, and whenever you use a method, use parentheses. So this way it'll do the same thing. And if you, instead of model, if you want to put year, you could do that. And then it'll put 1964. All right, so go through these, check it out. Don't just watch me do it. You could also put a list of keys if you want to print out the list of keys, which would print out brand, model, year, things like that. You can also add a new item, and we'll go over that in a second here. Change items and adding items is pretty much the same thing. You just kind of create a new one. And what they're doing here is just kind of reissuing that one and just giving it a different value. So here's the key, here's the value. They're just updating the value kind of without using an update method or anything like that. And again, if you'd want to go, I'll just copy this. I'll just get a step ahead here. If you also wanted to add an item, you could put color just like that, and you could put red, and I'll put it as a string. And not only did we update year, but we also added one by doing the same thing here. So adding and updating kind of works the same way. That's why you'll see multiple things here. Update, there is an update method, but it's doing just what we did, except the update method has to do it like this. So if I went back and used the update method on this one, I'll do it right after this, so it should change it. So I'll use this dict.update, and I'll use curly brace, and I'll put year : 2020. So I'll update it. And I think year should have a quote on it, like that, a single quote. And I should finish off the curly brace here. So that should make it 2020 because it should override this one since it comes after it. So let's see what happens here. And that works. So this is the same thing. It's doing the same thing, except it's coming second, so it's updating it to 2020. All right, so update, add items kind of work the same way. You could just add it the same way by just creating a new one. That's the easiest way to add an item. And they also have an update method, which we did. So I think we talked about this. So they're kind of similar. Changing and adding just works the same way. So you're basically just creating a new one, or updating the existing one is the easiest way to kind of describe that. And remove items, just want to point out they have something called a pop method, which you could also use with lists. And you just kind of put .pop method and then put whatever key you basically want to remove from there. And they also have pop item, which will remove the last one from the list, which here would be year. And they also have a delete keyword, which you can use, which removes something. And they also have this red thing here, just saying be careful, because if you delete the whole list, you'll get an error because it won't exist anymore. So removing, I think the pop method is probably the easiest one because you just delete what you want here. And there's dictionary loops where you could loop through a dictionary. You could loop through parts of it, loop through all the values, and we'll talk about doing that once we get to the exercise in doing that. But let's just try one here. Prints all the values. You can use values to return values of a dictionary. Here, let's just do this and see what it does. So this is just looping through for x. They're just using a variable for x in this dict. So the x in the dictionary, and we're just printing that out. And basically, in place of the values, we're just putting x. So that's why it's putting Ford Mustang 1964. So that's all it's doing there. And we'll do more with that. You can even have loops inside of loops, especially if we have nested dictionaries, which are a little more complicated. And I'll try to show you a little bit about that, but I'm not sure if it's that helpful, because instead of doing nested dictionaries, we're better off just working with databases, which we will. So anyway, that's looping. And again, we will get to the exercise in just a minute. Copying dictionaries, we don't need to copy dictionary. Nested dictionaries, I'll go over this, but basically you just kind of put the existing dictionaries. If you have one dictionary first, you could create them at the same time, create a nested, or you can actually take your existing ones and then add them to them as variables like they're doing here. So they're kind of creating, here's 3 dictionaries, child 1, child 2, child 3, 3 dictionaries. And then they're just kind of putting them in using the variables that you created up here and then actually using the same name here. Sometimes I like to change it and make it a little different so they're not the same things, but that's just creating nested. So then you can access through them, which is a little challenging because you have to get to the first one and then the second one. When you do that, you have to nest through these with these little square brackets here. So when they're going through here, they're getting the first one, second one, so they're getting to bias. So it's going through child 2 and then it's taking name. So it's kind of nesting. First level, and then second level, it's doing that here, and it's just printing it out. Now, looping through those can be a little more challenging, so I just want to point that out. And especially, not just looping through them, but also if you want to find something, if you have to use an if condition with it, it's even more challenging. I don't even know if we'll do that if we need to right now. But and dictionary methods, here's the list of all the dictionary methods. Go through them, check them out, but we're going to work through our exercise. And also here, we'll work through this dictionary. Let's see if we can do this just from what we know already. I'll go through here and I'll just kind of see if I can help you with it and see if I know this stuff, because if I don't, that'll look pretty bad if I don't know what I'm doing here. It says use the get method to print the value of the model key of the car dictionary. So the get method. So you know how get methods work. They use the variable here, car, and then .get, and a get method will use parentheses. So I'll put parentheses there. And what are we going to get? We're going to get the model. So in here, I'll have to put a quote, and I'll put model. Now in W3 Schools, you have to put the quotes in there. And I think that's right. We have double, oh, I need another parentheses there, because unless I already have it. Let me see. Yeah, I have the parentheses for model, and then there's also the parentheses for print. So I'm going to submit my answer and see how we do here. Here I am in my exercise 1. So I'm doing car.getModel, and I'm correct. And let's see this one. It says change the year from 1964 to 2020. Now there's different ways to do that, but the easiest way to do that is just to go car, and then I think you could use the brackets and put year and close the bracket, and then just give it a new year. We'll just put 2020. So car, year, which is the key here, and the new value is 2020. So it's just updating that. So we don't have to use the update method. We'll try that, and that's correct. And let's try this one. It says add the key value pair red. So we have brand, model, year. They want to add a color and make it red to this one. So let's do car, and then we'll do the bracket. Now we don't have color, but we're going to put it in. So we'll put in color. I'll just use a single quote. And I'll put equals, and we'll set the new value to be red. That should work fine. You can add one that way, or you can update one. And that worked. Let's try exercise 4 and use the pop method. Now remember, that removes whichever one you want. So we're going to use a method. So remember, it's car.method, car.pop. And we'll put our parentheses in there. And what do we want to remove is model. So I'll put the quotes, because it's not a variable. If you didn't have quotes, it would be variable. It's not a variable. Let's do that. And let's submit answer. And that's correct. And for this one, we're going to clear the whole dictionary. So we'll just do car.clear, because it's a method. And we shouldn't have to put anything in there. And I'll hit submit answer. And it's correct. And that's it. So we did okay with that exercise. So what we're going to do is create our own exercise. So let's go to the beginning here, and I'll get you started, and then we'll get back to it at part 2. So I'm going to copy this just because it'll have our code. And I'll go here. I'll create a new repel. So I'll just create repel. And it's going to be just Python. And I'll call it 23. And I'll just call it dictionaries. And I'll just put my initials, RH. And I'll create my repel. And I'll just paste that code in there. That way we'll save some time. Except we're not going to use this dict. We're going to use PGH, because that's short for Pittsburgh. Because I'm going to use the National League East from the 1980s. Because that's when I followed baseball. And there weren't as many teams, so it was easier to follow. Okay, we had 2 more rows. What we had in the 80s, here's 1980, and I remember this. We had the Phillies, Pirates, big rivals. Then there was the Expos from Canada. And then the Cardinals, Mets, and Cubs. And actually, these teams were never any good. Cardinals, Mets, and Cubs. You can see there at the bottom. They were never any good. But Phillies, Pirates were always good in the National League East. And I'm not sure why St. Louis is in the National League East, and why there's, like, Atlanta Braves are in the National League West. But anyway, these are the teams we're going to use, because I remember that back from the 80s. So I'm going to just do Pittsburgh first. And what I'm going to do is I'll put city, and I'll do mascot. So we have the city and then the team name. I'll call it mascot. And then I'll put the state. So we know what state it's from because there's teams from different states. So just, you might not know where Pittsburgh is. And for the city, I'll put Pittsburgh. And just remember, it ends in a GH. It's not like this. There is Pittsburgh sometimes spelled like that, but there's an H at the end. And the mascot is the Pirates. And the state, again, in quotes, is going to be, I'll just put PA. So we'll just do PA. We'll just use 2 letters and then put quotes around them like that. And that's Pittsburgh. So if I wanted to access anything from here, just like we did, there's a couple ways to do it. Let's say I wanted to access what the name of the team is. I could do print, and I'll do PGH. Remember how we were doing this dict. Now I'm going to do, you could try using get, and then inside here you can do mascot. And it should print out Pirates. There we go. Printed out Pirates. And if you want to get the city, you could put city. And it should be Pittsburgh. So it's kind of like going through a database, except we're just going through here and we're just getting the key, and then it's returning the value. So we're getting the key, returning the value. Getting the key, returning the value. And you can't do multiple ones in here, by the way. You could just print out the dictionary. You could just put PGH. And it'll basically do the dictionary. Or you could do PG items, I believe. I think you could do that. You could do it like that, where it'll show the different items, same kind of thing. But also another way to do this, to print out something from here, or to access something from here. And I'll use print again. And instead of using the get method, you could just do PGH, which is the dictionary, and then use those square brackets. And you could do mascot. Again, not really exciting here, but we're just kind of reviewing what we did. There we got Pirates, and you could do everything the same way. So 2 ways to do that. So I'll put 2 here. That way you'll kind of see them. And this one, I'll do the get method. And this is kind of like notes for yourself. And remember, with methods, you always do the kind of variable name dot get, and then you have to have parentheses for that, so you'll have double parentheses. And I'll just put, actually what I'll do is I'll put city here, and then for get, I'll put mascot. So they're kind of in a row, so it'll say Pittsburgh Pirates, at least when they print on top of each other. Okay, Pittsburgh Pirates. And then what I'll do is I'll print \n, so we get a little separation. And remember, \n should be in quotes. So for whatever we do next. What we're going to do next is we're going to create dictionaries for the other 5 teams in the National League East. Then we're going to nest them in another dictionary. And I think what I'll do is I'll stop here, and then we'll continue that in part 2. Since we spent a lot of time going over dictionaries in W3 schools, what we'll do is we'll continue this exercise, dictionaries with your initial, in part 2. So we'll see you back at part 2.